About 2 weeks ago, I landed myself in a very frustrating situation that was kind of caused by my own doing. Like, no one was to blame except for me. I had an assignment due, and it had been assigned for so long. This wasn't new. And the worst part about it is the initial due date was supposed to be about a week prior. And I just kept pushing it off and kept saying, I'm going to do it later. I'm going to do it later. I'm going to do it later. And when this happened, I knew I probably wanted to come on here and talk about it, and I want to talk about procrastination because it's something that has been a real struggle of mine for so long. But then I started to think about it, and I feel like I want to take a bit of a deeper approach because procrastination is kind of like the surface level of it, but I kind of want to talk about everything else that came from it and also the ways I can associate and connect that to other parts of my life. Essentially, I started to become so extremely hard on myself. I started beating myself up, saying, like, why did I wait so long to do this? Why do I do this practically every single time? It causes me stress, and I know that it stresses me out when I leave stuff last minute. But then why do I still do it? Why is this still my reality if it's something that I don't like the result of? And I actually had a lot of moments like that week and the next week where I was so overwhelmed with work because it's kind of like the end of semester. But again, I didn't need to be as stressed as I was. I had an ample amount of time to do these things, and I think I kind of got carried away with that idea of like, I have time to do this, and then time flashed by, and I realized the due dates were within the next few days, and I didn't know what to do and I was overwhelmed and I got through it, but it was a really, really intense couple of weeks. I would say the second week was a little worse because I kind of had one thing after the other and it was ongoing. But the assignment that I kept putting off, that was the prior week. So I kind of wanted to come on here today and talk about the idea of trying to stop being so hard on yourself. And this is something I am so extremely familiar with in so many different aspects of my life, in so many different stages of my life. It doesn't matter where I am, what I'm doing, there's some kind of aspect that's making me feel like I'm not doing good enough, and I become so hard on myself. So, yeah, I think the procrastination in that specific situation kind of sparked this idea, and I'm definitely going to connect it to that, but I think I'm also just going to connect it to so many other areas. Yeah, I just fully did not post or record an episode last week because I was so overwhelmed. I genuinely did not have time. And part of me felt so bad because I have not done that since I started the podcast. And because it's still kind of small and upcoming, it feels like I need to post every week to see some growth. But I knew that it was going to stress me out, and I knew I had stuff that I had to get done within a certain time frame. So I told myself it's okay to take off a week. People do it all the time. I need the time to focus and stay locked in and get done what I need to get done. But, anyways, let's get started. So I'm trying to figure out maybe which approach I should start with. I think maybe I'll start with the procrastination one just because that's kind of how I opened up this episode and kind of what sparked the idea. I think it's definitely related to my perfectionist personality traits. I do have OCD, which was only diagnosed end of 2025, and I don't know if this is relatable for other people, but when you're diagnosed with something and you start to understand the different ways that it fits into your life, you start to recognize all the different instances where it was prominent and the ways that it played a part that you never realized was connected. Like, I had suspected for a while that I had OCD, but when I look back on even just my childhood, even just past years, I always thought it was just anxiety. But the intense habits that I had and the rituals and the worries and the way that I would repeat instances in my head over and over and be so hard on myself and how I acted in a certain situation or planning conversations or scenarios in my head, I now realize that that was connected to the OCD. And I think the procrastination, for different people, it comes from different places. I think it's especially bad now because our attention spans are completely ruined and we're not to blame. It generally is because of the internet. It is curated and made in a way that will be addictive. At this point, it's kind of hard to live a life without having a phone and being connected to people, but we don't realize how much damage it's actually doing. Whether you spend 10 hours on your phone or two, it's affecting you in one way or another. And I think it's especially coming up when it comes to just getting tasks done or getting schoolwork done, assignments done. We're always putting something off because we always feel like there's something more interesting to do. And it's so hard for us to sit down and get something done when we think about all the other interesting things there are to do. And I think for a lot of people, that's probably why they deal with procrastination and putting things off. I mean, it depends on the person. Some people work well under pressure. And I think that is something that happens for me. I think sometimes when a task is not necessarily urgent, I won't really do it. Even if I have the time, I'll just put it off and be like, well, it's not due for a while. Why should I do it now? There's so many more other interesting things I can do now instead. But then it ends up kicking me in the ass and I get so anxious by putting it off. But then for some reason, it's so hard for me to break that cycle. Even though I know how I hate the outcome, it's so hard for me to break that cycle. And it leads me to being so incredibly hard on myself and kind of like living with regret and thinking like, oh, if I had just done it earlier. I mean, I think it's a pretty normal thing to live with regret sometimes. Sometimes if you did something in the past that you feel bad for, you can regret that. But I think sometimes we live in regret a little too much. And I think sometimes it's connected to situations that we can't really control. Like sometimes we regret having not done the assignment earlier. It doesn't mean that if the situation requires action because you did someone wrong or did something wrong, it doesn't mean that it doesn't require action. But it's more about the type of thing where, for example, with assignments, the assignment was assigned 2 weeks ago. You had time to do it, but you left it last minute. There's no point in sitting there and saying, why didn't I do it earlier? Why didn't I do it earlier? You can reflect on that later. But truly, it's not going to be beneficial in the situation because at the end of the day, you need to get the assignment done. So there's no point in sitting there and regretting having not done it earlier because now you're in this situation. There's nothing you can do to change the fact that it wasn't done earlier. I hope this makes sense, but all it is to say is I find I get so hard on myself when it comes to assignments, and sometimes I'll feel like the assignment isn't good enough. And I find because the perfectionism, I kind of have this habit to only turn in an assignment if I feel like it's my best work. I put in a bunch of effort into an assignment, even if it's only worth like 2% of my entire grade. I put everything into it because for some reason I'm gonna feel bad about myself and I'm gonna feel like I didn't put in enough work if I don't put all my effort into it. And I think it's like it's a good habit to have, but sometimes it can become really, really overwhelming. I think this is also relevant when it comes to grades. Sometimes I'm really, really hard on myself about a grade when I feel like I put in a lot of work and I still didn't do as well as I had hoped, and I feel like my work wasn't appreciated or the effort that I put into it and the hours that I put into it wasn't recognized and wasn't seen. That would sometimes happen in the past. I remember with specific professors, I took a business class almost 3 years ago, and there would be assignments where I would put hours of work into it and then I would get like a grade that had just passed, and I would be so confused about why my grade was so low. And I think it did have to do with the teacher as well because the class average was really low. And I remember people would rate the teacher like 0. I think it really had to do with the teacher and his style of teaching, and he was very specific about what he wanted to see. But it was so frustrating to me that like I put so much effort into these assignments that I put in hours of work and it still wasn't recognized for what it was. But yeah, I think it's just important to keep in mind when it comes to grades and getting stuff done. Try not to be so hard on yourself. And I know it's so much easier said than done. For some people, it bothers them more than others. Sometimes it's because they feel like others have high expectations of them, or someone has high standards for themselves, or they set themselves specific goals and then they don't reach those goals. It's good to be driven and want to do things well, but also don't depend your whole worth and value based off of a grade. Because a grade doesn't represent you as a person. A grade doesn't represent how hard of a worker you are. It is so abstract and it really, really depends on the situation. You need to stop being so hard on yourself because if you get caught up and you waste that energy on worrying about what you did wrong or worrying about not having done the assignment properly or the grade not being good enough in your eyes, all of that energy and time could have been put towards something productive. And instead, you were sitting there moping and being upset about it. And it's okay to be upset about a grade, but also, again, don't let it affect how you feel about yourself. Don't let it affect how you view yourself. And again, I think it's especially prominent in today's age because we live in such a fast paced world, and there's this image painted of the grind and always getting stuff done and never taking a break and being as productive as possible. And again, I've said this before, if you have energy, if you want to be productive, take advantage of that. If you're driven, take advantage of that, but also don't push yourself too hard. Don't push yourself till burnout. Make sure you have that balance. And the first step to living a life like that is to stop being so incredibly hard on yourself, because you're not going to get anywhere without balance. Yes, you could be a workaholic and get stuff done and never rest, and maybe you'll have temporary results, but it's not going to be ideal. It's not going to work out in the long run. You need to have that balance, because if not, you're going to crash. Anyways, I hope that wasn't all over the place. I hope that made sense. But really, I just wanted to say, like, you are so much more than your grades. And next time that you've procrastinated and put a task off and you're doing it and you're cramming it last minute and you're feeling bad about yourself and you're being incredibly harsh on yourself for not having done it earlier, take a second, relax, focus on the assignment, and then you can reflect afterwards and figure out what to do to avoid that type of situation again. And I think procrastination is sometimes hard because I know with me myself, it's not that I don't want to succeed and it's not that I don't want to do it. There's just part of me that, like, almost subconsciously, I'll do stuff last minute without even meaning to. But the very first step to leaving those kind of habits behind you is to figure out where this is coming from in the first place. Why are you procrastinating? Why are you putting it off? I find with me, sometimes I'm worried about the assignment being hard or not doing as well in the assignment that I'd hoped to. So I'll put it off so that I don't have to deal with it. But I know that I'm gonna have to deal with it eventually. So why not deal with it now with less stress? The next one I want to talk about is being hard on yourself in relation to confidence and self esteem. I have definitely been insecure for most of my life. I would say when I was younger, it wasn't really a focus of mine. I was happy with who I was, and I hadn't really reached a point where I was insecure about things yet. But I remember the very, very first time I became insecure about something. I was at a pool party. I think it was during the summer right after sixth grade. And I remember a few of the guys at the party made a comment about my body. And that's my earliest memory I have of feeling insecure about my appearance and not feeling super confident. And I don't know, it's kind of funny to me that, like, it took me a really, really long time for the comments that were made about me and the way that I was bullied. It took a long time for them to actually affect me in the long run. Like, I definitely went through a really, really awkward stage. But the comments that were made about me and the way that I was treated didn't really affect me until a little bit later on, because it definitely didn't affect my confidence. Like, I've talked about this before, but I was so confident when I was younger when it came to confessing feelings to guys. I would genuinely go up to them and tell them straight up. I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I felt the need to do that. And it's not like I would get the feeling that they felt the same way or feel like they were giving hints. It would literally be one sided. And then I would just go up to them and tell them. And I'd always get hurt and upset afterwards. But I don't know why I didn't stop. Like I say all the time, I wish I was as confident as I was then, because even though I looked very weird, to say the least, it didn't stop me from going after what I wanted. And it definitely didn't lead to, like, social anxiety or anything like that. But then later on, when I reached high school and I started to get older and people started to become meaner, and I felt like an outsider because I was a really late bloomer, I felt like such an outlier when it came to the people around me, and that would just cause me to be really hard on myself, whether it was self-inflicted or it came from outside sources. People would say things, people would just look at you in a certain way. I find when it comes to high school, people wouldn't necessarily say stuff straight to my face, but it's a look. It's a look. If you're a girl, you understand. Mean girls will have a certain look, and they're not saying anything verbally, but you could just tell. Like, I wish there was a type of name for that kind of bullying because I was such a victim of that. But yeah, I was just so incredibly insecure about myself and so hard on myself for years and years. And I think now I'm at a place where this is probably the most confident I've ever been. I have become so accepting of myself and for who I am, and I'm not constantly trying to change myself. I did deal with an eating disorder, and it definitely had other root causes and other things playing into it. But ultimately, at the beginning, the reason why it started is because I didn't like how I looked and I wanted to change the way that I looked. And honestly, words are so powerful. I cannot stress enough how much it matters the way that you speak to yourself. You believe the words that you recite. Words are so powerful because the words that you speak are what you are going to start to believe. So, for instance, if you go and look in the mirror and tell yourself that you don't like how you look, you say, I'm ugly, I don't like my body, and you're just pointing out and creating basically a checklist of everything you don't like about yourself. Even if it's just words, you're going to start to believe those things, and those are going to sit with you. And it takes time to get rid of them, but it is possible. You need to look yourself in the mirror and you're going to be faking it until you make it. You're going to be saying the words and you're not going to believe them at first. But then after a while, you're going to start to change your mindset and you're actually going to start to like those things about yourself and accept them. But yeah, after starting to change those mindsets and change those habits, now I love things about myself that I used to hate. And if I had told myself months ago that I loved certain things and I would beat myself up every single day for even having, I would not believe you. It just goes to show that like mindset is so important. And once you start to accept yourself and once you start to have more love for yourself, if people say stuff, it's not going to affect you as much. Like, I would say, I don't remember the last time that someone said something to me about my appearance, but still, I would be so hard on myself. It was honestly self inflicted. Like, it was based off stuff that happened in the past, but that just started to build up because I kept repeating in my head, I don't like this, I don't like that. Your mindset changes everything. It really does. Just try it, okay? If you're dealing with confidence, self esteem, whatever, next time you go look in the mirror, say to yourself, whether it's out loud or in your head, most of the time I say it like in my head, tell yourself that you like a certain thing about yourself. And you're not gonna believe it at first, but do it. Do it every day. Every time you look in the mirror, say it. You're gonna start to believe it. I promise you. I promise you. You seriously need to fake the words that are coming out of your mouth for it to work. And it's such a waste of energy hating on your body and hating on how you look. This is the only body that you're gonna have. This is the only face you're gonna have. So what is the point in hating on it? Like, look after it. Make sure you feel your best. Do the things that make you feel your best. But also, if there are things where you're just naturally like that and there's nothing you can really do to change that, don't be so hard on yourself because then you're going to live a miserable life hoping that you looked a different way. Why not start to accept yourself for who you are because you're never really going to be able to change that? Anyways, kind of related to confidence and self esteem, I want to talk about being hard on yourself when you are in ED recovery. And this one is definitely a little more niche. Not everyone is going to be able to relate to this one, but I just think it's so important to talk about because for the people who do understand it, it's so important to hear it. And it's been such a prominent part of my life, at least recently, so I really want to bring it up. So, if you didn't know already, I did deal with an ED, and I am 7 months in recovery now. And you have to think about the fact that 7 months is not a lot. It really isn't a lot of time, especially when it comes to something like that. Like, my body was going through it for so much longer than the time that I've been in recovery for. And I think it feels like it's been longer because things became so good quicker than I expected them to be. And again, progress is not always linear. Not everyone is going to recover at the same pace. For some things, it's going to be easier for others. But I think because things got better kind of quickly, it makes me really hard on myself when I have certain negative thoughts and the ED kind of starts to creep in. And now I'm at a point where I can push it down and ignore it and not respond to it. But there's a part of me that feels hard on myself, that feels like I should be at a place where I don't have those thoughts anymore. And that's just not the case. Like, I become so hard on myself. Like, for instance, if I have a certain thought, the ED kind of tries to creep its way in and sees an opportunity and gives me an unhealthy idea. And it's like, you should do this, you should do that. I'm able to push it down and ignore it. But I'm so hard on myself for even having those thoughts. But again, it's still really, really early on. Like, even though I'm physically better and I feel the best I've ever felt in a really, really long time, it was mentally so overwhelming. And it makes sense. It's not just going to disappear like that. It takes time, it takes work. And if you're in recovery, I just want to say I'm so proud of you. Please don't compare your progress to other people because, again, everyone progresses at a different pace. And any progress is good. Any level of progress is good, even if it's the smallest thing. When you engage and expose yourself to the little things, it's going to get easier. They might seem like little accomplishments to you, but any accomplishment, any progress is good. And I need you to stop being so hard on yourself about your progress because the fact that you've chosen recovery is not easy, okay? And I will say it was very hard. But what's even harder is continuing to live in that sick mindset, in that sick state. That's even harder because you're just continuing down a bad path. But if you turn around and start the path towards recovery, it's not going to be easy. It's honestly going to get harder before it gets easy because you're exposing yourself to things that you were so afraid of for so long. And the ED is basically against everything that you're trying to do to get better. The ED doesn't want you to get better. But once you start to move that way, you're going to get on the other side of it, and there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. So next time you're hard on yourself, it's so important to keep in mind the ED voice was so powerful for so long. And just because you have the thought doesn't mean that you're in a bad place. It doesn't mean that you're going backwards. It doesn't mean that you lost progress. It's just natural for it to appear sometimes. And push it down. And I'm not saying completely ignore it. Acknowledge it and be like, okay. And then just keep going on with your day. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't respond to it. Yeah, and I think I'm also at a point where I'm so good that I am terrified of going in that direction again. Like, during the ED, it was hard, but I became so comfortable and so used to it. And my biggest fear was no longer having it. My biggest fear was recovery and moving away from it. It truly was. But now my biggest fear is going back. And it just goes to show how quickly the tables turn. And I don't know, like, sometimes I'm hard on myself and I get mad at myself for even putting myself through that. But it was something that was so much more powerful than me. And it's kind of ironic because it kind of, for some people, it starts out as a means of control, but then you lose control. It starts to control you. You're not fully in control. It feels like you're controlling, but you're not. You're not really. You're not truly in control because there's this voice inside of you saying, you should do this, you should do that. And it's so hard to defeat the voice because the voice gets so loud and it gets louder than your own rational voice. And the rationalities start to disappear. The things that you do, the stuff you do to yourself, starts to become irrational, but to you it seems normal because the voice is so loud and it feels like it has your best interest at heart. It's just really, really powerful. When you're hard on yourself, when it comes to your progress, I just want to remind you that, like, you were so strong and what you went through was so difficult, and you need to give yourself grace. You need to be patient with yourself. You need to be easy on yourself because having hatred towards yourself is not going to carry you through recovery. You need to have self-love throughout the process because if you're just mad at yourself the whole time, it's not going to be productive. And again, it's easier said than done. It's not an easy process, but you need to learn to be easy on yourself. You need to let yourself rest and sit down and get better so you can live your best life again. Anyways, I hope this episode was easy to follow. I hope it wasn't all over the place. I brought in a few different examples, but I just wanted to talk about, the importance of learning to have love for yourself and to stop being so hard on yourself, because it doesn't carry you anywhere. It's not productive. If hating yourself was a productive solution, you would have already seen results. It doesn't do any good. It really doesn't do any good. And the issue with being so hard on yourself is if you put yourself through the mindset of like, I need to be the best at everything, and if I'm not the best, it means I'm not good. You're never going to feel like you're doing enough, because there's always going to be someone who, at least in your eyes, is better at it. There's always going to be someone who's better at it. And a successful life doesn't equal the most successful person in the world. Someone else's success doesn't take away from your own. Someone else's beauty doesn't take away from your own. Like, it applies to so many different parts of your life. And again, living in regret, regretting having not done the assignment earlier, whatever it is, it's not productive. Living the past and repeating past instances over and over in your head, which is something that I do deal with. Like, I will think back on certain situations which happened years ago that the people who were also in the situation probably don't even remember. I will feel bad for it, and sometimes I'll find myself like apologizing to people for something I did years and years ago, and they're like, I don't even remember you doing that. Like, I become so hard on myself, and I feel like I need to create this perfect image and this perfect accurate picture of myself for other people, and it bothers me so deeply if like their view of me isn't accurate to who I know I actually am. But like, it's not your responsibility to make sure that other people's views are accurate of who you actually are. If they don't take the time to see who you actually are and just make assumptions, it's not worth having them in your life. They're not supposed to be in your life. Why are they making assumptions without trying to get to know the real you? You know what I mean? But yeah, all this was to say is stop being so fucking hard on yourself. Like, if your body's telling you that you need a break, sit down and take a break. You deserve a break. We are so overwhelmed with everything around us, whether it's the media or people's influence on us. Like, we feel like we always need to be as productive as possible, and we worry that we're not being productive enough with our time, and we worry that we're not doing enough, and we worry that we're not good enough, and we worry about being perfect all the time. And again, I think it's natural with the kind of world that we live in. Like, it's not natural for us to be fed this much information about people that we don't even know in real life. It's an overwhelming amount of information, and it really can play a role in, starting to be hard on yourself. Like, why don't I have this? Why don't I have that? Why am I not good at this? Why are they better at me than this? And it's like, if you're constantly comparing your life to other people, you're never going to feel satisfied. You need to learn to be okay with where you're at and start to accept yourself, because it's a waste of energy to be this hard on yourself. There truly is no benefit from it. And yeah, I just go easy on yourself. Like, you are your biggest critic. If no one else is saying this to you, where is that coming from? Like, if it's possible to be your biggest critic, it's also possible to be your biggest supporter, because it goes to show that, like, how much of an impact your words have on yourself. You know, if your harsh words can have that much of an impact, think about how much of an impact your positive words can have. Once you change that perspective, you're gonna live a much, much happier life. Trust me. Take advantage of the motivational moments, but when your body's telling you to take a break, take a break. Because if not, you're gonna burn out. You're gonna crash. It's not worth it. If you need to take a break, take a break. If you're tired and want to take a nap, take a nap. Listen to your body. Stop being so hard on yourself. You're doing amazing, and I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much for sitting down and joining me today. I love you so much, and I'll see you next week.